Greetings, sci-fiction awesomeness. My name's Owen Cotter. You are here watching sci-fiction on all the digital awesomes, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, X, simulcasting on all galactic awesomeness. Mars is in the background. Say hi, babe.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. We're getting ready to do a lot of stuff coming up. We're going to bring the chat window on here on the back burner there. And I got my name. My name is Owen C. Cotter right there, scifiction.com. If you have not followed our pages, follow us on YouTube at SciFiction Official. Follow us on Facebook at SciFiction COM and Twitter and TikTok at SciFiction. All those links are down here, all our handles. If you want to go to our website is SciFiction.com. We've got a whole bunch of content we're going through. We're about to do about 4 or 5 events coming up. Our first event coming up is going to be, well, first off, this week, tomorrow, we're going to bring on our correspondent and writer, Kieran Burt, to discuss his appearance. He's going to be down on the con floor all weekend long at Star Wars Celebration in beautiful Tokyo, Japan. So there's that. And then after that, what do we got after that? We've got...
So as Kieran's going to be in Tokyo, Japan, our next one trip to events... God willing, still getting a little information, but we're going to LA to the Universal
Fan Fest Nights,
which is in the Universal Studios, Hollywood. That would be on the 25th. And then from there, we're going to drive up all the way to Las
Vegas, Nevada for Level Up Expo.
Level Up, if you guys don't know, Vegas actually has quite an agenda and event throughout the year, and
tons of events.
Slowly I'm finding good ones. This one's actually a gaming convention, technology. They have games from all over
they've
the
showcased
world.
Demos too from all
amazing stuff. You even have from the Army
eSports. Yeah, we talked to them last week. Yeah,
they have their game is amazing. It's kind of a mix of
like
Killer Instincts with
Call of Duty,
and Street Fighter mixed together. Yeah. It's really good. I got to play a little bit.
Yeah, and then she's we're gonna both be over at me and Mars over at what's after that? ICC, right?
The event, yeah.
ICCC.
After Los Angeles to the Fan Fest in the Universal and Level Up in Las Vegas.
Level Up Expo.
Mid-May, we're going to be in ICCC.
Imperial Commissary Collectors Convention in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee.
If you guys don't follow them,
follow them up on here.
They are not a Star Wars themed convention, but that is the majority of their stuff. It is amazing. We will be going live.
Yep.
And it's in Nashville, Tennessee, and it's going to be at the Embassy Suite. So if you're in the area of Nashville, which so many people I know live around that area that follow us, please go. And they still have tickets. I don't know about room block. I think it's probably
max capacity. All the vendors' booths, I think it's a double square feet of last year. It's going to be massive. But they are one of the biggest collector expos, if not the biggest of its genre in the country, sci-fi based as well. There are tons of guests.
Like, what's one of many main guests?
We got Warwick Davis, and then last year they had Billy D. Williams. A lot of heavy Star Wars, but there's other guests too. Tons. If you're looking for vintage collecting memorabilia, that's the place to go. He's got. We're going to bring on Michael Havens sometime in the next couple of weeks to talk about the event more. He'll give away the download and all that. And then in June. Got some stuff. Then we're going down to San Diego Comic-Con, which we're dealing with that this morning with some reservations.
So June is probably our time that we're going to take a quick little break.
For a few weeks.
Just for a few weeks. 2 weeks. And then, of course, we have July, the ending of July, which currently we just hopefully, God willing, we get a
room at the Hilton Bayfront.
Room at the Hilton Bayfront, because I was here all morning. And I was sniping like
she's over there in the sales, sniping it up, trying to get the deal flow.
So that would be SDCC, so San Diego Comic-Con.
That's where they have all the actions down there.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's still the other Comic-Cons that are big, like Brazil, Star Wars Celebration. But so far, we're getting there. And that one's in the endings of July. And then after that, we're
contemplating if what we're going to be doing in August.
August, I'm not too sure about the August one.
Yeah, so that's about it on that.
That's where we're at right now.
Yeah, today's guest, we have an amazing guest on the. She's in the waiting room right now. Is Sierra Dall. She is a really cool person. I've been researching her, listening to some of her audio podcasts, doing a little due diligence on her former partner, who he passed away, Mr. Colin Cantwell. If you don't know who he is, a legendary person in the sci-fi ecosystem, including Star Wars and many other things. I'm going to let her talk about what they're doing with the website and all the goodies. I'm going to bring her on right now. Hold on just a second, everybody. Sierra, how's your day going?
Oh, it's doing pretty well. How about you? Can you hear
Doing
me
awesome.
okay?
I can hear you perfectly. You're sounding clear and awesome. We're doing good.
That's
We're
good.
going over all the laundry list of things we're going to be doing in the up and coming weeks and months and so forth.
Yes. Sounds exciting.
Mm, it's very, very busy. We've been down this whole morning going over they have this portal. You have to wait like in a little waiting room and then they lock it on. You have to go fill out all this stuff to snipe you a nice deal on a hotel room down there at Comic Con. We usually try and get the hotel down at as close as possible to the convention center, but they have San Diego has the Bayfront. I'm sure you've been down there, but the Bayfront is like the hub of all the media activity, and everybody's going back and forth between the convention center and the Bayfront. So it's a lot. We walk like 6 miles every day down there, and your legs
You're
are
going to the San Diego Comic
yeah,
Con.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, how exciting that is.
It's gonna be
That's a
awesome.
big one. Never been that one.
Oh man, it's an organism all on its own. I think there was like 260,000 people. Like you go up down the Gaslamp district, there is tens of thousands of people. And they
Oh,
party
gosh.
and hang out down there till 4 a.m. So you need to be somewhere where it's not like the music is thumping, so you can actually get some rest. You know what I'm saying?
I can believe it. Yes.
So how was your morning going, or afternoon rather?
No, it's still morning here. I'm in Colorado.
Oh, you're in
So,
Colorado.
yep.
Okay, that's my brother just
Yeah,
moved
yeah.
recently. Okay,
Oh,
very good.
whereabouts? Where'd he go? Which?
Somewhere outside Denver, one of the suburbs. I'm not exactly sure. He just
Oh, okay. Yeah.
moved from Alabama, so he's up there doing it. He's a doctor up there, so he's doing stuff. So.
No, I lived in various parts of Colorado, so yes.
Cool, cool. Well, I was looking over the new website y'all have. It's absolutely. I was talking with Brad. He was showing a little about. Give me some of the links on it. He talked a little bit about, of course, Colin. Go over this in the website here. We got it on the screen, but involves you? You were his partner for many years. Who first off, who is Colin Cantwell?
Well, my gosh, how much time do you have, Owen?
You got 45 minutes an hour, as long as you want. We're live streaming, so we're good to go.
Yeah. No, Colin Cantwell created all the shifts for the original Star Wars movie, and what you're looking at right now is one of his original concept drawings,
Right.
the one in the middle. And aside from that, and we'll get back to that, but aside from that, he worked in 2001 Space Odyssey. He worked with Kubrick at nighttime over turkey sandwiches, he says, one-on-one, discussing the scenes in the movie. He turned the opening scene in 2001 from a documentary beginning that Kubrick wanted to have and turned it into a also Sprach Zarathustra da 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 movie that you hear this all the time now. That was his idea, and the opening sun, moon, and earth scene. So it was very dramatic. And worked with NASA for a number of years, sat behind Walter Cronkite on the first moon landing. He had a comm line between NASA, he was listening to the astronauts and NASA talking. The other two stations had them landed, and Colin, they were following the flight plan exactly, and Colin was not hearing what he thought he should have been hearing. And so he told Walter they have not landed, and the station manager said, "You're going to never work the rest of your life." And Colin stuck to his guns, and he said, "Yeah, I don't think they've landed." And that's what Walter broadcast. And guess what? They had to coast past their original landing spot and find a better place to land. Designed the first IMAX theater in
Really?
San Diego.
Wow,
Yeah, the Reuben Fleet. It was Reuben Fleet Theater out there. First multicolored monitor for Hewlett Packard, took them from a few colors to 5,000 colors. Worked on War Games. You ever see War Games? That movie?
Well, you with the Matthew Broderick film, of course, is a fantastic.
Yeah. It's a wonderful movie. We had the set in our basement. The whole set. He designed the set for the movie, and he programmed all the computers on the screen and all the computers in the room.
It's called the Whopper. It's a big war machine games computer system.
Yes, that was fun. That was fun. Yeah. So, and on and on. And Buck Rogers, he created a stepper camera, which was revolutionary at the time.
Is that the Gil Gerard Buck Rogers?
I don't know which one. This was the
70s,
movie?
the one with the,
Yeah, I don't know if exactly that one or not. Can't say for sure. but it was one of the earlier Buck Rogers. It was probably in the 70s. You're probably right. Yeah. So I mean, he's been a very prolific creator all of his life.
Yeah.
So.
He's worked with Spielberg as well, and some other ones too. What do you do with Spielberg exactly?
Oh, that was an interesting experience. Spielberg wanted him to program the lights on the spacecraft and
Okay.
in computer programming, but it was really early on. So they had an agreement with this company that was going to do some of the, programming for him, and he was working with them. And after several days, and apparently, as the way he put it, there are huge computers and multiple cooling towers
Okay.
with these computers, and they came up with one frame, and that was it. So the company said, if you don't tell anybody, we won't charge anything. So,
Those must have
but
been early. I know what they did with the movie, The Last Starfighter. They were using Cray computers to crunch all those graphics. Must have been something maybe pre that. So I mean, it makes sense. It would be cooling, having it getting overheated and all that.
right, exactly. It was. There's pictures that Colin actually drew a drawing of the set with the background.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's one of his sketches that he had. So that was, and if you listen to Close Encounters of a Third Kind, at the very end, there's this
Mhm.
mumble jumble up in the control tower. Well, that was
Right.
Colin.
Really, that's all. Now they filmed that in my hometown on Berkeley Air Force Base, by the way. When
Oh,
Spielberg,
really?
yeah.
Okay. So you're not too far from Devil's Tower then, or?
No, well, Alabama was where Berkeley was, so I don't know where they
Oh,
filmed. The
okay.
other part was probably out in somewhere in the desert or somewhere. But
Yeah.
they
Well,
filmed
Devil's Tower is where the scene was
yeah,
taken up for
yeah.
Close
But
Encounters. Yeah.
when they had like the base, that's all filmed on Berkeley. I remember an old associate of mine was down there. His mom, when he was a kid, he was like, Preston, you need to hire my son as he needs to be an alien in this. He was trying to get in to be one of the little aliens that come out of the spaceship. So they had all these casting calls. And supposedly there's a guy that did a documentary about all that being filmed down there in Spielberg and have a lot of archival footage, I think somewhere on the internet. But that was pretty cool. These designs here on the Colin Cantwell site. Now, this first design here, that's the what you call the Cantwell class Star Destroyer, and now I believe that was recently featured in Andor. Have you seen that?
Yes, absolutely. I haven't actually seen Andor because I don't get streaming, but uh, the original designs were down in our basement. We had to move in 2014. And Colin, all these years I knew him 24 years, it was 16 years up to that point. He said there's something important in the basement. So, okay, so what's important in the basement? When we had to move, he had all the original concept art that he had made for George Lucas. Colin was the first employee of the company. He was creating this art while George was looking for a studio. So,
Okay.
yeah, he came up with all these ideas, the X-Wing, the this one particularly, the Star Destroyer. And some of these concepts, the original ones were modified, and then later he built the first models for the movie. And
Okay.
one thing I have learned recently looking at YouTube, yes, there you go. That's actually the very first drawing of any kind of a ship at all for the movie,
Mhm.
the first X-Wing. And
Very
if you
cool.
look to the right of that, that's the first action scene for the movie. You can't see
Ah,
it very well in here, but it's a depiction of the Star Destroyer with the guys dropping off at the Star Destroyer to attack the
right.
Prince's ship. And if you look really carefully, you'll see that they're carrying little tiny lightsabers. So
Hmm.
I'm very sure that's the very first depiction of a lightsaber in any kind of a
Wow,
drawing at all.
that's
So
awesome.
that was way back in 1974. It was before he was even hired
Right.
by by
Now, how did he
Lucas.
get into the Lucas approach him or somebody from the art department? How did he get into working with Lucas on the Star Wars franchise?
Okay, so Colin had thought about how ships could be made in the movie,
Mm.
and you know about kit bashing. I'm
Of course,
sure
the
you've heard
model
the
kits,
term.
they take all little
Yeah,
pieces and glue them on and mix them up.
right.
And yeah.
Well, Colin started kit bashing way back at the beginning of time, and one of the things he did was create a couple ships that he wanted to show George to show how the ships in the Star Wars movie might be able to be made.
Mm.
So his friend Hal Barwood was working with George on American Graffiti.
Okay.
And so he knew about Colin's work and he said, hey, George, you need to meet Colin and see what he's been doing. So he did. George came over to Colin's house and it had like a spyglass of some kind, and he was examining these extremely intricate ships that were, beyond imagination. And they were kit bash ships, and there were hundreds of different pieces. Colin figured he had 50 different kits of
Oh, wow.
pieces in these. So that's how he got hired. He already had been working with Kubrick on 2001. He already had been working with NASA, so he had this tremendous space background and passionate about space all of his life, and a lot of other short clips as well.
Right.
So, but this one, we were at IBM, maybe before COVID. And the guys over there were all excited to meet Colin, and a couple of them said, well, hey, we need to bring back a couple of his older ships that haven't been used, the original concepts. And so that's what happened. This one is actually brought back into, like you said, the Cantwell class arrestor cruiser in the Andor movie. So
Absolutely amazing
yeah.
scene if you haven't seen that. Well, there's a character in there called Luthen. For the fans that have seen it, they've seen it. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend watching Andor season 1. Season 2 will be out here shortly. The first season was phenomenal. It's like there's not a lot of Jedi, but it's Star Wars to the focuses on the Empire and the beginnings of the rebellion. And the Star Destroyers featured in that episode was a cool scene. It's called Luthen's Escape, and we'll just leave it at that. If you have not seen Andor, I highly recommend seeing that episode. It was absolutely gorgeous. The impact of his designs have been, the foundation of one of the longest running science fiction fantasy franchises in the world, only next to probably Doctor Who and Star Trek. He's interested in space, and he worked on the NASA moon landings. What brought him into that? First off, JPL, I believe he worked with them, correct?
Yes, he worked with JPL, and they're the ones that actually brought him into a lot of the space related, activities that he had. Well, when he was in grade school, first grade, he read through the entire library by the end of the first year.
Wow.
Always interested in space, anything mechanical. I mean, trains, planes, ships, and space particularly. So it started way back then. And then he actually volunteered for NASA when he was younger, after he got out of college, and they gave him some jobs. He was doing liaison work for the NASA to do, films and such to introduce people to some of their new projects that they were doing. And had a couple interesting adventures in that direction. So that's how he got started in space, but that was always a passion of his.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
Space exploration is such a big thing, big topic, but they've got so much stuff going on now these days. You've got, we've got SpaceX, you've got NASA doing the Artemis project, the Orion, and all kind of goodies. Did he work on, I believe, maybe I may be correct, maybe not. Did he work on anything with some of the space probes for JPL or any of stuff like that with some of the things they've sent out in the space beyond just spacecraft? Or, actual manned spacecraft?
Well, he did, and it was kind of a funny story. And I'm not sure if it was the Voyager ships that were actually sent out to take stereo pictures of Mars.
That would be Binder or Viking or something, like one of them.
Yeah, it's one of those way back then. But they sent them up to Mars with the intentions of having two of them taking a picture of the same spot, so that they could see what the topography was looking like on Mars. And so National Geographic came up with a front cover with the topography. The only problem was it was upside down.
Wow.
They had the lows as the highs and the highs as the lows. So Colin got a hold of that, and he created an actual relief map of his own, a huge one, probably 10 feet by 5 feet.
So he created
like
a map of the landscape, like of all the stuff.
He did the topography, yes, of Mars.
Very cool.
So, yes. No, he was. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
He was deeply involved in anything that was related to space. One of his main passions was quantum physics. Okay. So when he was in college, or shortly after he got out of college, he went to a Bucky Fuller seminar. Are you familiar with Bucky Fuller?
I'm not.
Oh, he's a famous physicist. And buckyballs. Anybody that's in physics knows who he is. And so he went to a seminar and he listened to him, and he decided to take off 3 days to determine what Bucky Fuller had missed. And so He did. And years later, a lot of his hypotheses were proven true. Some of the
Mm,
later physicists proved some of his ideas that were actually accurate at that time.
wow.
So no, he was an amazing guy. Totally different than you'd expect from a person like that. You'd expect him to be kind of standoffish and not particularly friendly because he was pretty much a genius. But he was quiet, but people gravitated to him like magnet. I mean,
Yeah.
he just attracted people, and he loved people, and he loved talking to people. We went to so many Comic Cons,
Mm,
and one of the most memorable times was when this young man came up in a wheelchair,
mm,
and he said to Colin in tears that Colin saved his life because all the
mm.
ships that he had were so inspirational to him that he spent all that time building Colin's model ships himself.
Fantastic.
So,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Speaking of Comic Cons, what were some of the big ones that he'd go to Celebration? What were some of the ones he would go to and frequent that over the years? Some of the highlight ones.
Well, the Denver Comic Con was one of the earlier ones, and that was huge. Well, 100,000 or so people. And I remember a wall of people coming down. I was like, okay.
That's awesome.
So yes, we were positioned right in the front aisle,
Oh wow.
on the aisle as the main group
Right.
came in the door. So it was pretty exciting, yes. And then we
That's,
really traveled all over the country to Comic Cons, little ones, small ones, everywhere.
we
So it
love
was
Comic Con. Comic Cons are always fun, depending on whatever size they are. They always got great speakers, great panels, and the fans, of course, and Star Wars goodies. I know. Speaking of Star Wars, they're coming up, I believe, in 10 days or 8 days, 7 days. Star Wars Celebration is in Las Vegas. I mean, excuse me, Tokyo, Japan. We're going to Las Vegas, but
yes,
Tokyo,
yes.
Japan, and there's going to be a lot of stuff down. I think they're going to be showing a lot of trailers and stuff. I got to ask a question. And since the was it the Star Destroyer, the Campbell class Star Destroyer was featured in Endor, is there any other ships that you think you or Colin would like to have seen in some of these upcoming series? Like he's done a lot of the main designs, like Y wings. Any other things you'd like to see maybe pop up if you could choose for them to pop up in any of these new series?
Well, it seems like most of his ships have survived practically every Star Wars film since the beginning of time. In some fashion, they've modified them, but the X-wing, the Y-wing, the Millennium Falcon, the original Millennium Falcon. If you look at the bottom of that picture on the left, you'll see this strange-looking piece
So
of, yeah. So that was the original Millennium Falcon,
yeah.
and Colin created that, and apparently, Space 1999 movie had a similar one, and somehow they found out there was something along the same lines, and they actually literally tore this whole thing apart physically
Oh, wow.
and kept the cockpit and put it on the side of the current Millennium Falcon. But
Cool.
his Y-wing, his X-wing, TIE fighter, all of
Mhm.
that, you still see them flying. So I'm thinking that Colin's ships are probably about the only thing that has survived all of the films. I don't
Yeah.
know of any movie that hasn't had some part of one of his ships in it. Can you think of anything that might not have had that in there? I mean, anything?
Not anything, but I will tell you what would be really cool if this actual ship design was featured in some one of the shows as just some ship that was there, a hero ship, some kind of ship. That'd be really cool. They've never actually nowadays. Space 1999 was a while back, so most people my age, or I do remember, because I'm a sci-fi geek, but some people don't remember it. This ship showing up would be kind of a cool homage, in my opinion. I always liked the design of the ship. Of course, the cockpit was used for the Falcon. This was the original Falcon, which I believe, if I'm not correct, became the 1004, which was Leia's ship. This kind of similar design, right?
Right, exactly. And a lot of the ships, even if the exact design wasn't used in the film, they modified it. Like even the Skyhopper.
Mm-hmm.
Luke was playing with the actual Skyhopper model
Right,
that Colin
on
had created
Tatooine.
in the
Yeah.
very first New Hope movie, and then later on it became a transport ship for
It
Darth
was
Vader.
the
Yeah,
shuttle
but it's the
Tiberium.
same. The
Yeah,
shuttle, yeah.
yeah.
And so Imperial Shuttle, and it was the same design. It was just named differently, a little bit different design, but it was the same idea with the triangle.
Very
Yeah.
cool. And that's the one that they had captured in the Revenge, or Return of the Jedi. Original was Revenge of the Jedi. Captured and turned into the ship that they kind of got onto the Endor moon, which is of course, the shuttle type. That was a captured one. But yeah, the Skyhopper. I remember that scene because that was kind of like when he's just chilling there on Tatooine. He's flying that thing around all that. Did
Right, exactly.
was that actual model? Was that one built by Colin? And is
That
that
was
one?
actually, yeah, that's actually Colin's model.
Very cool. Where
Yeah.
is that model now? In ILM? Do you know where that's at?
I think Lucas has all the models that he could get.
I got to
And the
see
other
them
thing
out.
too is that a lot of these ships, uh, when we went to Comic Cons, he was signing a lot of prints. And just before COVID, he preferred to pre-sign them before he got there, because a lot of times
Mhm.
we put somebody's name on it and other
Right.
people brought in other things to sign, and it got pretty hectic. So he would sign a lot of the model photos that he took of the ships before we got to the Comic Con. So we have a lot of them left, and
Mhm.
that's what's available on the site for sale, or the
Okay.
website, are some of these
Well,
ships.
let's talk about the site for a second. I was talking with Brad, who's the manager. He said that y'all redesigned. It looks gorgeous. I love the cleanness of it. The site. Tell everybody a little bit about what's on the new site. They've got the shop here and all the stuff. What can they look for on the site?
Right. Well, I started out with the original Colin Cantwell site, and then
Mhm.
I just couldn't. I have two other businesses that I'm also running, so I've overwhelmed. And
Oh,
we had met Brad years ago at Facebook, so
okay.
uh, we kept in contact. And so I asked him if he wanted to redesign the site into an e-commerce site, and he said sure. So that's what he did. He did a beautiful job, and
Yeah.
he's deep into it right now. In fact, Brad's actually writing a biography about Colin with
Really?
my help. Yeah, so
I'd love
we're
to have
working
you
on
back
that.
on to promote that. That'd be cool to read that. Huh?
Yes, yes, it should be very interesting. So if you have a promo code on your end, which I'm sure you
Yes.
do, if anybody
Featured
goes
right
here, they
now.
can get
Yeah.
a percentage off of the prints if they buy any of the prints. Some of them, the price goes up as the print supply goes down. So some of them are a little less expensive than others. But as it goes along, as we reduce the supply, obviously, we're going to be raising the price on the ones that are left.
Makes sense.
So,
And
but
you've
yes,
got
this is
May
all.
the 4th's coming up. I was talking with Brad. He said something about percentage for the May the 4th up until that point or something like that.
Right, exactly. And the other thing too is there's CSJ Foundation, which is really exciting. And uh,
Mhm.
I connected with them maybe a year ago. And Eric Jacobs over there has taken on Colin's work and decided to use Colin's work in all the different fields that he's been in to encourage young people to get involved in STEM programs. That's science, technology,
Oh,
engineering, arts, and math. So he's creating a museum,
mm.
and it's going to feature all of that and have immersive type exhibits where kids can get involved in these different technologies and different types of art and such, and explore what they might want to do with their lives as far as a career in that field is concerned. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited about that. And he did an exhibit for the COSI Museum
Mm.
over in Columbus, Ohio, and I was
Mhm.
at that earlier last year, and did a really nice job featuring Colin's work. But Colin has been involved in so many aspects of that. So we're donating a percentage of the sales to that museum too, as well.
Okay, I did not know that. I didn't know. Well,
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
watching the fans here, which there's some fans watching, the our promo code is Sci-Fi, SCIFI. If you want to go down to the site and put in that code, you'll get your discount on that. The where is this museum going to be located at when they finish it? The exhibit, I mean.
I'm not even sure exactly where it is. I know that Eric's over in North Carolina somewhere. I'm pretty sure it's going to be around that area. That's a good question, and I should have asked him. He just started actually doing a new museum recently, so I haven't had a chance to really talk to him about it. But yeah, we'll find out. I'll let you know.
I love to know
So,
about that.
but Colin
The
designed the Y-wing, and you can see the middle one here is the Star Destroyer, that
yes,
opening scene, and then the Death Star. So each of these ships, as Colin was creating them, he thought of them as actors in the movie.
Mhm.
So when he built a ship, he thought about what is the role this is going to play and how is it going to be depicted as a good guy ship or a bad guy ship.
Right.
So that's how he designed them.
Yes, I always like the design of the Y wing. It's kind of like it's different than a lot of the ships, and if you've got like you get like kind of the cells on the back, kind of reminds me a little bit of Star Trek, but I like that they're like more minimalized down, and it's got the turret, the gunner seat on the back, and it's just a cool ship. It's a bomber ship, I believe. They use what do you call it? They take out the Star Destroyers. I did Rogue One. They took them out too.
Yeah. Well, this was before Star Trek, so
Yeah, of course. I was like probably like
yeah. But
1970.
on the front of the thrusters, that little ball,
Yeah,
you know what that is?
do not know what that is.
Okay, that's another thing. Let me just get into this. I've been looking on the internet and I'm finding all these people who are getting credit for a lot of things that Colin had done. And it was disturbing. And one of them was that he brought the kit bashing to, that somebody else was the one who got the kit bashing to and brought it to Star Wars movies and the ships and the way they were built. But it was Colin, definitely, who was the first kit bash ship, with the one I was telling you about that he showed George. But all of the ships have been kit bashed in some fashion. So the hub of that thruster that's facing out towards the left here, those were the legs containers for women's nylons.
Really? That's awesome, dude. Nice. That's very
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, he'd pick anything he could find and make the ships. The X-Wing ship that was the model, the body of that is actually a roadster, from a
Really?
roadster
Okay,
model.
I can see that. I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, he just took things from everything he could find, and yeah, I don't see that on the home page
Should we
there.
go
It's on the
back
other
to the
page.
shop? It might be on the shop.
Yeah,
You
it
have the
would be in the
shop.
shop for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got here. It's it's in there somewhere. But yeah, Star Wars is that's another thing. Like Star Wars itself, when Lucas was doing the design of a lot of the ships in the universe in general, it was supposed to be kind of like what you call like a used universe, where it's kind of all cobbled together. And that's why when you look at even the Falcon after it was taken apart, it's all kind of like pieced together, been used and worn through, and it's in a long time ago. So, what are your thoughts on that kind of? Because a lot of the sci-fi's are more clean and there's no, it's all brand new looking and all that jazz. What are your thoughts on that choice of design scheme for the entire universe? Of course, Colin's work parlays into that as well.
Well, it has its own ambiance, I guess is what you could say.
Right.
It has a feeling of uh, excitement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the confusion itself is kind of draws you into the story. There's so many different pieces to it. So yes, no, it's great fun. It's
Yeah.
just great fun. And one other thing I noticed too, there was a drawing that somebody had in a book actually,
Mm-hmm.
and the drawing was something that George Lucas had made. And the drawing
Mm-hmm.
was a picture of a Death Star, a picture of a TIE fighter, and a picture of the X-Wing. And the understanding was that George drew these drawings, showed them to Colin, and then Colin designed the ships. But
Okay.
there's only one problem with this. The drawing of the Death Star had a trench on it.
Hmm.
And the reason that there's a trench on the Death Star in the first place was when Colin got the two halves of the styrofoam to make the model, the styrene, I should say, it they couldn't fit together the way they needed to. It had a ridge around it, and the
Right.
ridge had shrunk. So there was, he'd have to do a tremendous amount of work to smooth this out so it would be able to be seen on by lighting and on film.
Mm-hmm.
So he said to George, hey, George, how would you feel about having this trench in the middle of the Death Star? And these guys could be diving in there and fighting with each other and shooting in these dramatic scenes. And George says, I'll call you back. And
Yeah.
so a couple hours later, George called back and he said, well, just go. Can you do the extra work? So Colin got away without having to do that work.
That is, I
And
never
but
knew that.
the point
Amazing.
is, though, that the Death Star trench happened because of Colin.
Mm-hmm.
So George had to have made those drawings of Colin's work. They weren't drawings he made to hand to Colin to show him how to create the ships.
Right.
And that's one thing that is a misunderstanding. And
Yeah.
the same thing with Ralph McQuarrie. Colin was the first employee of the company doing these designs before Ralph was an employee. I
Okay.
believe Ralph was the second employee besides the assistant that George
Yeah.
had hired for himself, but as far as the actual people working on Star Wars. And so the designs were all Colin's. They weren't somebody else's designs, even though they were modified later years. There were people who got credit for doing them because they worked on them extensively in later years, but Colin was definitely the person that did the original designs for the ships.
Well, just talking about, you mentioned Ralph McQuarrie. Did him and Colin get along, or did they know each other pretty well? I guess
Oh
because they were.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Colin had high regards for Ralph. He's highly of his artwork, and really, he got along with everybody. Really, Colin did, for the most part. Yeah, people
They had
even
like a lot of
Kubrick.
legendary artists in that day. Some really good sci-fi.
Yes, No, he had a lot of regard for the people that he worked with and thought they were exceptional. And they brought him into projects. I think that Joe Johnson might have been partly responsible for him working on 2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
I think he might have brought him in there. Or was it not? Maybe it wasn't Joe. Maybe it was, who am I thinking about?
You got Douglas Trumbull. He was the one that did the rideshare company.
Trumbull. Yeah, I think you're right. It was Doug Trumbull. But no, they got along quite well, as far as I can tell. And, Colin he was pretty easygoing. I mean, honestly, we had very few arguments over 24 years, and we had a lot of fun together. So,
Very cool.
yeah.
The space background. Let's go back to that for a second. If he were around today, what would you think he would think about all this stuff that's going on with Mars and everything that's just taken off so much? You've got all this, just everything, and the landing these rockets, the straight down reusable rockets, all this technology that's just going on galactic steroids.
If he were around today, I probably wouldn't be able to get him away from the television
Wow, nice.
because he'd be watching everything that happened in detail every day.
Were
No,
there
he would
any
be very much excited about that. He was, he loved technology and space.
Would there be any particular things, even early on or down the road before Star Wars, that kind of inspired him? Not just space, but any particular like television series or things that he really enjoyed that you knew he liked, that were something that really like, wow, this is something inspiring that kind of got him parlayed into all that?
That's an interesting question. I don't, he never talked about much of anything that he watched on television. You have to realize how early this was when
What
he was
about
working
comic
on
books
it.
or anything like that?
No, he never talked about comic books at all either. I think he was mostly into reading about the technologies themselves. We had probably a couple thousand books of Collins. There were a whole wall of books, and hallway of books, I mean, the whole house was books. So he read extensively, but most of what he read were technical type manuals and books about the sailing ships, about schooners and trains. We had enormous amounts of train sets down in the basement, every
Oh,
gauge you can possibly imagine. When we had to move, I had to learn so much more about trains than I ever thought I wanted to know in order to talk to people about them, to sell these train sets. Just he was deep into problem solving,
yeah.
and that was his. He said he liked to create things that people could not unthink. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's how he got some of his jobs. He would see a upcoming movie, he knew what the problems might be, he would come up with a solution, then he present it to people and get hired.
Wow.
So, yeah.
The computer work he did with Hewlett Packard and, of course, War Games. What are some of the highlights he's done with that? Was we get into touch space too much on that so far?
Well, as you know, he programmed all the screens for the movie, but
Right.
in doing that, he actually reprogrammed the HP monitor from a
Mm-hmm.
few colors to 5,000 colors.
Right.
And that was one of his accomplishments. But he was always into, like I said, problem solving. So he would look at a situation like the colors in the monitor, and he'd come up with ideas that were way out of the box that most people would never have thought about, and they presented to them, and then he got hired. He actually worked for Hewlett Packard for a number of years. So, yeah.
I got to ask, this is kind of a powerful question that it can be related to both you and Colin, but is there a message for like aspiring artists or creators you could kind of give to inspire them based on your relationship, not only with Colin and just, but his legacy in general, for the people that are kind of getting into this or kind of trying to take their stuff up to the next level?
Well, that's a good question. And yes, I do definitely. The one thing I learned from Colin, and I'm very much the same way that he was, is that he would create an idea. If he wanted to get a job, like I just said a minute ago, instead of just going in and saying, "Hey, here I am, here's my resume," he would learn so much about that organization. By the time he got in there, he already knew what their problems were, and he would actually come up with some solutions to their problems before he approached them.
Hmm.
And that's really how he got his work. He didn't just go in cold. He really understood what their needs were, and did enough research on the ones he wanted, and he went after the jobs he wanted to have, and he only wanted to work with the best.
Yeah.
Originally, he started out wanting to be an architect. I don't know if
Okay.
you knew that.
I did not know that.
And so, yes, that was his passion. And so he created these houses and a model home. And he went to Taliesin for
Hmm.
Frank Lloyd Wright. And he did it without any invitation, which you're not supposed to do. And he found Taliesin, and he went there and knocked on the door, and they ignored him. And they said, sorry, you don't have an appointment. And so he just sat on the deck and waited. It didn't go anywhere. Finally, after a number of hours, they finally said, well, okay, come on in. And then a couple of days later, Frank Lloyd Wright saw him and looked at his work, and he said to Colin, well, go back and get your tuition and come back. And Colin said, well, isn't there a waiting list? And Wright said, no, not for you. So he went back to California to get his tuition, and by the time he got back, Wright had passed away.
No.
So he was never able to, but he didn't want to work with anybody else because Colin, he only wanted to work with the very best, Spielberg, Lucas, Kubrick, all the best.
I got to ask, in that round table of legends of film, what was like any kind of particular stories he's told you, like humorous stories or something really cool that the fans may not know about any one of those guys, whether it's Lucas or Kubrick or Spielberg or any of that?
He didn't tell me too many stories about them exactly, but I know he got along really well with Kubrick, for instance, and a lot of people didn't because Kubrick was very intense, but Colin was very intense as well. And he was brilliant, and they had a lot of respect for him, from what I can tell. I don't think he had many disagreements with these people.
Very cool.
And one thing that did happen is that George Lucas actually offered Colin to start ILM. So, yes. And Colin turned him down. So I think there were some hard feelings there when Colin turned Lucas down. But Colin did not want to become a manager of a large company. He wanted to be a creator. So that's why he didn't go in that direction.
Yeah. Before his passing, were there any things that he saw that were not just Star Wars, but any particular designs that he was like, those are some interesting designs that he really enjoyed? And it could be anything, science fiction, aviation, trains, anything he's seen that kind of was like, man, that's something I didn't think of, or something he could have improved upon. Something he saw or could translate.
He didn't really say that, except we always watched anything related to space on television, rockets launching or whatever. We were glued to the television for that. He enjoyed watching sci-fi on television, Star Trek and a couple of the other sci-fi programs. But no, he never really said too much about it. I know one thing he didn't like is he didn't care the direction that Star Wars went with the animation. Right. It was too animated after number of episodes there, a number of years.
A lot of animated series come out. They've what you got: the Clone Wars, Rebels, they're just cranking them out like left and right over the last few years.
Right. No, he liked the original, real type models and such, but not so much CG. I know he felt strongly about that. He thought it lost a lot of the personality and the feelings.
Speaking of that, so you've got live action. To go to that, you got practical models versus CGI. There is kind of like a lot of debate on that in the fan bases about the aesthetic and the realistic look of practical effects models and sets based on CGI. If he were here, what his thoughts? Of course, he liked the practical models. What are your thoughts on the practical sets and the practical models? Would you like to see a mix or both or separate, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I tend to agree with what Colin said. I like, I think CG and creating the models is fine if you can do it more efficiently, but and doing it by hand is obviously extremely tedious. So I think it would be fine, and I think he'd probably been involved in helping to create some of those if he were still alive. But at the time that he was doing it, at the time he was alive, there were a lot of these opportunities, so he was doing it with the kit bashing. And one other thing to note about that was kind of fun and interesting is that we had what were called Nurney drawers. Okay. And so what are Nurney drawers? He had in the basement about maybe 4 foot wide, maybe 3.5 foot wide, 5 foot tall square of drawers that were maybe that wide, that tall, and that deep. And each of the drawers had its own set of pieces of some model. So he
Nice.
would tear all these models apart of the same kind, and he'd take all the same pieces and put them in the drawers. And there were hundreds of those drawers. And we had them in the basement on a turntable. So you could turn this huge square around and get to any side he wanted. And that's what he did when he made the models. He put all these pieces and cataloged them in these drawers. So yeah, our basement was very interesting. It was
I'll bet.
wall to wall, floor to ceiling boxes
Nice.
of all these different things. And he actually made his own clothes, which people don't know.
Oh, really? Okay. My grandmother's a seamstress. That's really cool.
Yeah, he made, when I met him, he had long silver gray hair down the middle of his back and was wearing these weird looking Lycra jumpsuits.
Mhm.
And he made the Lycra jumpsuits himself. He used to lie down and just trace a pattern around himself. And he had a serge machine down in the basement where he
Mhm.
would sew them together. He wasn't making them when I knew him, but he had a lot. And I still have some of his original Lycra suits, but totally unique. Now, Colin was so different that it would be hard to explain it to anybody. He was a completely unique individual,
Yeah.
and there's nobody like him. I mean, there's a lot of people that are working in different industries, but Colin wasn't in just one industry. He just saw problems and he kept finding these solutions. Like I said, with the HP monitor,
Mhm.
and the on the Max Theater down in San Diego, all of these things. He just came up with all these different ideas and how to figure things out, move
Yeah.
things forward.
Well, I got to ask you. Mentioned a book that's coming out, a biography. What's the progress on that, and when do you think that might be coming out this year? Or?
Well, I don't know. It's up to Brad. Brad's been wonderful. He's been a great friend, and we were going to have somebody else start to write the book. And I realized at that time that the person was a really good writer, but he didn't have any knowledge of Colin. And Brad's been so passionate about Colin and his work. So he's doing a lot of research right now,
Okay.
talking to me, and I'm giving him names of people that he needs to contact and talking about as much as I know about Colin and his background.
Mhm.
And so he's starting to not write yet, but he's just doing research on the book. But it will come out probably, I imagine, within a year. I think it
Mhm.
would take him about that long at least to put the book together. But there's so many different aspects of Colin's life, and such a quirky guy. He
Always
used to
good. You'd be
camp all the time. He'd take his van and he'd go camping by himself, and got caught in quicksand one time. And
Wow.
in the desert, just. And Colin and we would travel to Comic Cons and they would pay our way. So we'd fly all over the country. And then we ended up in Greece and Quebec City, Canada, Mexico City. But then when we didn't have a Comic Con,
Mhm.
I would rent a car and I would drive, and we would go 20,000 miles in a trip.
Wow.
You go all over the country, take like the southwest corner, but it would be a comic book store and then a national park, and we camp in the national park, and then comic book store and the national park. So it was a paid vacation. You
That's
know,
awesome.
all of it was deductible because it was legitimately part of the business, because we had to get from one place to the other. We just happened to go through parks to get there.
That's awesome. Nice. Nice. Well, in closing, I'd like to bring you back when you get the book put together and all that jazz. That'd be too super cool if you're willing to do that. And
Sure.
I wanted to thank you first off for joining in on this broadcast. We've got a lot of people viewing on there. There's been some comments on there. We've got we're simulcasting here on 4 or 5 websites, so about
Oh, okay, cool.
300 or 400,000 fans on that. So we'll be seeing a lot of archive views on that as well. I want to thank you for joining us on this broadcast, and I'd love to have you back. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join us here today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate that.
No problem, Sierra. No problem. And I look forward to seeing more of the stuff. If you are following or on our site or watching this, you can go to colincantwell.com and use our promo code SciFi to get some awesome goodies from the site. Thank you so much, Sierra. I hope you have a beautiful day.
All right. You too. All right now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good day.